Hello, everybody. So welcome back from break. We've been asked to remind everybody to double check your cell phones from being on break and make sure that they're turned into the less annoying position, whichever one that might be. And we're Telltale Games, and we're here to talk about indie game development and episodic gaming. And I'm Kevin Bruner. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Telltale, and with me today is Dave Grossman, who's our design director, senior designer, and infamous game designer of yore. Well, our big game right now is the Sam & Max series of games, which this isn't going to be a post-mortem on Sam & Max. Actually, this month's game developer has a post-mortem on Sam & Max. So you'll be able to read that now. But what we're going to do is talk a little bit about what episodic gaming is and kind of how we do it and why we do it and all of those good things. So we'll dive right in. Sam & Max. So for those not familiar, Sam & Max is a series of 6, we call it Season 1, is 6 episodes of a game. They come out monthly. So every 30 days you can come and download a new game. It's also available as part of the subscription service of GameTap. And the games are pretty much point-and-click adventure games with dialogue trees. So they're very heavy. Character and writing is pretty much where most of the entertainment from the game comes from. We're in the middle of the season right now. Episode 4 just came out. So we have 2 more episodes to go for the big season finale in March, and then there'll be a little bit of time, and very likely there'll be a season 2. So that's the episodic model that we've established, and so we're defining what is an episodic game, because there's a lot of games out there that have episode 1 attached to them, and there's it runs the gamut of everything that's considered an episode. What we consider an episodic game is something that's first and foremost reliably scheduled. We say on day 1 when we launch the pilot for Sam & Max, these are the dates that every episode is going to be available. So you need a commitment up front to creating those episodes. It's very difficult to make an episodic game if you're going to rely on the revenue from episode 1 to pay for episode 2. You put your schedule at risk, which puts your credibility with your customer at risk. This very reliable kind of television-style schedule is a big part of what we consider episodic gaming. So like a comic book, like a television show, you don't want to wait about a year and a half for the next thing to come out. You want to know that, in our case, for Sam & Max, every 30 days I'm going to have access to a brand new piece of content around Sam & Max. The other thing we define episodic as is smaller games. If you're going to maintain a relatively tight schedule, you can't make a 60-hour epic game, and people don't have time to play a 60-hour epic game. So our episodes are designed to be consumed relatively quickly over an evening or a weekend. So we have between 3 and 6 hours of gameplay per episode. So you can kind of get into it. Instead of going to a movie, you might decide you're going to play your Sam & Max episode. So the other part of the definition is price point. So we look at it as an alternative to a movie, an alternative to a paperback book. So our games are priced for Sam & Max. They're $8.95 per episode if they're purchased from us. You can pre-buy the whole season for $34.99, or you can get it as part of your GameTap subscription. So these are all really cheap ideas. It's cheap, reoccurring content. I hate to define things in terms of what they're not, but in this case, we don't define an episodic game as we have 6 episodes. Each game isn't 1/6 of a whole. It's like a TV show. Each one has its own beginning, middle, and end. There's characters that reoccur and have backstories that go throughout all the episodes, and it's like watching Friends or whatever television show you like. The more you understand the characters and their backstories, the more the little inside jokes and stuff make sense to you. But they're not required to kind of get in and out and enjoy an episode. We don't consider episodes to be expansion packs, so there's not like a great big beginning and then you decorate a couple of things that are downloadable afterwards. So, there's a lot of different definitions for what episodic is and isn't in the gaming space right now. And we certainly don't want to criticize anyone else's idea of episodic, but we really have a firm idea of what we're trying to do and what's important to us about episodic. So now it's why episodic. Telltale is a spin-out from LucasArts. We're 31 people now, so we're a big studio. We have 2 games in production, and we're at the Independent Games Festival. Sam & Max is an independent game that was, it exists because that's the game we wanted to make, that and our Bone game. The studio also produces a CSI game with Ubisoft, which is a more traditional kind of thing. But why did we decide to embrace episodic gaming? We spun out of LucasArts. Most of us have worked in the games industry for a long time. We kind of got tired of making the same game over and over and over again, spending 3 years to make, you spend 3 years of your life to make a game. It gets 2 weeks in the spotlight. The Scandinavian kids get on their blogs and tell you your controls suck, and then everything gets on with it. So we wanted to try to do something that was a little more satisfying to us personally. The other thing is we're getting a little older, like the market is. We don't have the 4 weeks to dedicate to playing every game that comes out. So we like the idea of building smaller games that people can actually finish. One of my personal thoughts is the worst, in traditional game development, the worst position is the second to last level designer, because anybody who actually gets to the second to last level is going to finish the game. Most of the audience doesn't get to the second to last level. So that's, making things that people can complete, making sure that all the effort that we put into it, everybody's going to see, so that we don't end up spending a bunch of time and money on parts of the game that nobody's going to appreciate. And we really love the idea of this type of content. And again, to kind of define something in the negative, we didn't make it so that we can make more money off our games. It's not, there's a bit of a climate on the internet and the blog space that people make episodic games so they can figure out how to milk $70 out of what should be a $50 game or a $40 game. Obviously that's not what we're doing. We feel our prices are competitive and appropriate for what we're doing. We also didn't choose to make episodic games because we had a great big game that we couldn't pay for, so we decided to label it episode and try to sell episode 1 to subsidize the rest of the episodes. We were committed to the whole franchise from the whole season from the very beginning. We really, really, really like this format. We think it's going to be the next major format in gaming, this kind of serialized, regularly scheduled consumption of gaming. It just works much better as we have less time, and it also kind of facilitates more experimentation, less risk. There's all the usual suspects of smaller budgets equal more opportunities to take risk. And lastly, how do we actually do this? There's a post-mortem in Game Developer this month that you guys can read. This is the Game Developer Conference, so we're not going to go a whole lot into the nuts and bolts of, we make models and we animate them and all of that. What's more interesting, I think, from the actual production standpoint is how do you design products that work in this context? And to that end, we have Dave Grossman, who is our design director. So.
Thanks. Yeah, so I was about to say actually what you just said. I was hoping to stay within the realm of things that we learned that were actually going to be useful to people, and the actual nuts and bolts of production are going to differ so much between game by game and studio by studio that there's not much that we can really say. But there is one thing that will remain universal and extremely important to anybody trying to do anything remotely episodic. That is that plan like crazy. Okay. In case this was not already obvious, you're going to be doing episodic. You're going to be on a very short production schedule and possibly even on a shorter release schedule. Sam & Max, for example, we put out every month, and it takes about 4 months to do each episode. So do the math. We have several episodes in development at any one time. The designers and the producers are kind of jumping back and forth and maybe thinking about as many as 4 in the course of a single day. So having a good plan helps to keep people sane in an environment like that. And the best way to achieve that is, frankly, just to either be or hire a good, experienced producer do it. You'll be happy. That's all I really want to say about actual production. Instead, I want to bring up 4 random topics that may not be on your radar, but probably should be if you want to be successful at this stuff. First off, choosing a good license or creating one if that's the kind of thing that you do. This is one of the things that I think Telltale is particularly good at, maybe just because we think about it. It's not hard, but people have a tendency to just go with something that they like personally or something that made a lot of money at the box office or whatever was the first thing that they could get their hands on, and don't tend to think very much about the fact that the license and the game are going to have to cooperate with each other, and you can go with one that's going to help you or one that's not. So in terms of episodic, what you want is, number one, you want a license that's going to be broad enough that you can do many, many stories in it. Okay, duh. I've got My Dinner with Andre up there. That's out. I have, let's see, Oprah and Charlie Rose both up there for some reason. I'm not quite sure. Those work good on TV, but you know, there's kind of only one character, although there is a recurring cast of guests, so that's maybe a little bit better, but it's going to run thin pretty fast. Having something with more than one interesting character is always nice. I've got Friends up there because there's a whole, you know, ensemble of arguably interesting people on it. The problem with that one is locations. They never really go anywhere, and I'll get back to this in a minute, but the repetition of locations isn't received the same way in a game as it is on television. So we've been working with Sam & Max, and this is one of the main things that I really love about it, is it's about as broad a license as you could imagine. The comic books are just insane. Steve has the characters going to the moon one episode, and then they'll be kidnapped by volcano worshippers, and then they'll go down to the corner store, and there'll be demons in the cereal aisle. They go all over the place. Anything can happen. So I can do stories in Sam & Max pretty much forever without running out of available material. So you want something that's broad in that respect, but the second key thing is that you also want something that will support stories that are themselves small. And in this case, I don't mean small by length, although that is useful. I mean small as in kind of personal. And this is why, for example, Bone is a much better license for doing episodically than Lord of the Rings is. It's just everything sort of feels a little smaller. If you were going to try and do Lord of the Rings, you need sort of majesty and grandeur, and you need big giant armies sort of charging over hills and nations at war and that kind of thing. You're going to be making your game in a matter of weeks and squinching it down to a downloadable size. It's going to be actually really hard to pull that off. So why try? Why not go with something a little smaller? Go do a Woody Allen movie would be good. You know, it's a small number of characters, and they rarely tempted to go outside. Hello Kitty, maybe, too, actually. Okay, oops. That's not the one. Okay, so now you've got a license. Now you want to design this thing. And Kevin actually hit on my main point of philosophy about episodic design is just there's an assumption floating around that I keep hearing from people that what they want to do is design one great big game and then slice it up into pieces and then sort of shove those off every month, send somebody a piece. And that doesn't sound too good to me. We don't do it that way, and we don't do it that way for a reason. And my great metaphor is the Sandwich of the Month Club. If I'm in your Sandwich of the Month Club and you send me a chicken sandwich one month and you send me a turkey sandwich the next month and then a roast beef sandwich, I'm getting what I want out of the Sandwich of the Month Club. I'm getting a sandwich every month. But if you decide you're going to make one big sandwich and then send it to me a piece at a time, excuse me, that first month when you send me the bread, I'm going to be kind of disappointed. And then the next month, maybe you send me the lettuce, and then you send me the mustard, and things are just kind of lopsided. And the thing that you have to remember sending somebody a game every month is that although these games are part of a whole, they're going to be played on their own, and so they have to stand on their own. They have to be satisfying on their own. That means that basically they have to come to an end, not the story so much, but gameplay actually has its own sort of drama, and that needs to wind up at some kind of a spot where the player feels good about, okay, I've finished with this one piece, and now I'm not going to be feeling bad about waiting a whole month for the next thing. The reaction you want is, that was a great sandwich I'm still hungry, give me another one, rather than I just ate the top of the sandwich and where's the rest of it. So I basically approach each episode individually when I'm designing them. I give each one a beginning and an end, and they've all got several acts in them. They're just much smaller than they would be in a full-size game. It's more like distilling the game design rather than slicing it up. Works for me to think of it that way. Maybe for you too. Okay, now. Recurring elements are going to be part of any kind of episodic project that you do. They're going to help you in two ways. One, they're going to save you money because you're not going to have to start from scratch every time. And two, they're going to tie things together. You're going to fire up the game and say, hey, there's that same character that I saw last time, and oh, there's I know this store, I know my way around it already. It kind of feels like here I am at home. The thing you have to watch out for is that there is a line between familiar and repetitious, and it's drawn by your audience in an invisible place, and you don't know where it is until you cross it and they tell you that you've crossed it. So you want to be cautious about that. Your mileage may vary on this stuff, but I thought I would just talk about some of the things that we tried and how the audience responded to them. Okay, so first off, we built a neighborhood for Sam and Max. There's their office in the street outside and a couple of shops down the road. And we reused these in each of the 6 episodes of Season 1. They comprise about half of the actual geography of each game. So it's actually a pretty big chunk. We changed the puzzles in them and some of the details, but anything that wasn't really directly related to the current story we left alone. There's bookshelves and lava lamps and stuff. And we even didn't change the lines that Sam and Max say when you go and click on those things. The jokes were actually the same from episode to episode. And we were a little apprehensive about this at first. We weren't sure how people were going to react, and we were watching it very closely when we released the 2nd episode. And to our surprise, they didn't say much. Then the 3rd episode came out, and people started griping. They just basically didn't mind going back to the same locations, but if they were exactly the same, it started to feel like still life instead of like life. They wanted to have new dialogue lines written for the same old stuff, and they wanted to see some new things in there. They wanted to have the time of day change or the seasons. They just basically wanted to see it kind of coming alive from episode to episode. So fortunately, we're working episodically, and that means we had a couple of episodes out, and people gave us that feedback, and we were able to just kind of basically turn it around, and the second half of the season start addressing those issues and actually spiff stuff up a bit. We're redecorating now. Next thing is game mechanics. We designed this simple driving mechanic, and I mean really simple. It's just point and click. You kind of veer right and left, and there's the 2 guys in the car, and you can shoot the gun, and a couple of other things. And we use that from game to game, but we use it in a different way each time. So the first episode, you're in there, and you're pulling people over, and you're giving them tickets. And then later on, you get to do a car chase. And then you do another car chase, but the car that you're chasing is really tiny, and so you have to deal with it differently. And then you get chased, and you have to escape. So it was, it was just basically a different application of the same game mechanic each time. It always looked more or less exactly like that. A few details changed, but not really very many. And that was actually much better received by the audience than the other locations were. As it turns out, it just seems like changing what you do is a lot more important than changing what things look like. Characters are the best thing as far as recurring assets are concerned. Part of our goal with Sam & Max was to create a viable supporting cast that people were going to respond to. So we have these 2 characters are kind of the regulars. They're Sam & Max's neighbors. They run the 2 shops down the street, and you sort of always know where to find them. You always kind of know what they're going to be about. They change their focus a little bit from episode to episode, but they're kind of like members of your family. You can always track them down. Our incidental characters also tend to recur fairly often, partly because we just like them, and partly because it's somebody that we don't have to draw from scratch, and we like that. These guys are called the Soda Poppers. They're out-of-work child actors who appeared in the first episode basically as obstacles, but then turned out in the 2nd episode we were doing an American Idol parody, so we needed some celebrity judges, so we brought these guys back again. People on the forums were like, hey, it's the Soda Poppers. Hey, we like those guys. Then 2 episodes later, we were doing politics, and so they became the governors of the 3 states of North, South, and West Dakota. Turns out people really, repeating characters isn't a detriment in the same way that repeating locations and repeating gameplay might be. The sort of familiar aspect of them, people really respond to them much better. You just can't go wrong with a good character. People liked checking in with the regular cast every time and seeing what they were up to, but they responded even more strongly to the sort of randomly recurring characters like these guys. There was a sort of an element of familiarity combined with an element of surprise that kind of worked really well together, and we started getting requests for the return of certain characters on the forums. So based on this, I'd say reuse characters a lot, but jumble up which ones you use, because it's true what they say about absence and the heart growing fonder and all that. Last thing, community. Anybody see Field of Dreams? Build it and they will come. That's what they say. Not true. If all you do is build the game, they won't come. They don't know who you are. They never heard of you. In the downloadable arena, we don't compete for shelf space anymore, but we do compete for people's attention. And word of mouth is not the kind of great giant snowball that we all wish it was. And even if it does kind of get going, the minute it stops to rest, you basically have to start over. So the idea is you've got to get people talking about your stuff, and you've got to keep them talking about your stuff. The guys who were up here before us actually had a couple of good things to say about sort of getting the grassroots started. We also have a pretty elaborate website that we use just as a focus for all this. And we do the usual stuff. There are forums and blogs, but we run contests, and we put up videos, some of which have nothing to do with the games. We've got little online games for people to play. We have music from the games goes up there. There's just all kinds of stuff, and basically the idea is every couple of days there's a reason to go back there. We have about 10% of the staff of our company that actually pays attention to this stuff and maintains the community and the website. And you must do this because you have to put in the effort to and just make this happen, because it won't just magically and organically appear if you don't. And that's, I see, we actually have 7 minutes left for questions, so let's go.
So does anyone have any?
Unless no one wants to ask anything, in which case we can all just knock off early.
Hello? Okay. What I want to ask is the art assets that you create for the game, like in the second episode, you got the TV studio kind of thing. In the third episode, the Mafia Toyland thing. Where do you draw a line of, we can only make this much assets, we can only make this much voiceovers, this much models, before we have to work on the next episode?
Yeah, that's all part of that intricate plan that I was mentioning. We basically allowed ourselves, I think it was 2.5 new pieces of art, and we have a kind of a sloppy definition of exactly what constitutes one location. But we have X number of days to make them and X number of artists to put on it, and then that's it. That's all we got.
Okay, thank you.
And it's also a function of budget. How many people are dedicated towards making the series. So for Sam and Max, there's 2 dedicated environment artists, and so to maintain the schedule, about 2.5 new rooms of geometry can be built for every episode.
Thank you.
Hi, Joel DeYoung, Hothead Games. As someone who's currently in production on an episodic title, I think you guys are to be applauded for blazing the trail on this kind of stuff. On episodic and the related issues that you brought up. But even though it's a bit tangential to your topic, I also wanted to note that Sam and Max and Bone have both been sort of a resurgence of adventure games. I mean, the adventure game genre isn't really what it used to be. I just wondered if you could comment on where you think adventure games are going today.
I think they've gone there. They're going where we've gone. I think adventure games actually got into trouble because they were a little too geeky and they were just a little too hard for ordinary people to play. You just sort of would wind up banging your head against the wall. So we try to focus a lot more on the kind of good stuff of character and story, and basically just designing them well and posing the kinds of problems that you face so that you will actually have a chance to figure out on your own how to solve them. I think people just basically designed a lot of bad adventure games, and that kind of killed the genre, so we're hoping to do a little something for that.
Sounds great. Thanks.
With a single worldwide business model, how have you found success in various regions?
Sam & Max has been doing very well worldwide for us. It's absolutely a global product. It makes it a little difficult for us when we go to launch an episode because Australia is screaming for it as we're going home to get rest to launch the next day. But yeah, it's definitely been a very global market for this particular product. We'll be localizing everything that we do production-wise. We plan for localization. It's hard to localize when the games are coming out monthly. Particularly, now you're talking a lot of different languages coming in, so we'll localize when the season is complete. So right now, English only, it's doing very well worldwide. So we can't really say one territory is better or worse than another. It truly is a global product.
Okay.
How did you find your 30-day release cycle, $8 price point? Like, how did you find that balance between releasing them and how big your game was going to be?
How did we do that?
The 30-day schedule really just felt right. Kind of maps well to comic books and other kinds of entertainment. We've heard some episodic games shooting for a weekly schedule, and that seems, we want to give our customers a little bit of time for it to kind of soak in and for them to get together and talk about it, and time for us to get some feedback during the season. So we could do weekly. It would really front load an awful lot of work that we would be locked into. So monthly just felt right from day one. Telltale is almost 3 years old now and was started with the idea of doing monthly games. So we've been driving towards that goal. Sam & Max is our first monthly game. On price point, we started 3 years ago with $20 games because that's what all downloadable games were, $20. And you really run very quickly in the episodic model. 6 episodes, $20, $120 a game. They're ripping me off because they're selling me a $40 game for $120 just because they can. And obviously that's not our intention. So our Bone games, we dropped the price to $12.99 for those, and they're a little bit bigger than the Sam & Max games. And Sam & Max at $8.95 or $34.95 for the season, which makes the per episode cost about $6. Is right. One of the things that we believe at Telltale is games are just too expensive as entertainment. The $60 game feels just really heavy. I mean, everybody's buys a $60 game, and then you expect a $50 trade-in, so it's really only worth $10 to you. That's arguable in the industry, but we think we want it to be compared to a paperback book or a movie. We want the relationship with the customer. We don't want to sell them just one product. We want to become part of their entertainment palette. So they have the theater, they have the book, they can watch television, or they can come and check something out at Telltale.
Thank you.
I think we've got time for one more, or one more. All right.
One more.
All right. You're up, and everyone else can catch us outside.
Hi, I'm Seg, Emerson College and Everything After Productions. With a lot of explaining of episodic gaming uses a lot of television analogies, and I was wondering, especially since you also work with CSI and releasing a title, I was wondering, has either with CSI or any other licenses approached you, or was more accustomed to the episodic model because it's fitting more to the television or other media just because of episodic? Or it's just more like I was just curious because CSI is a box, but it's very obviously easily could have been split up 5 ways. I was just wondering if there was debate or more accessibility to other mediums.
Yeah. Our CSI games are built as episodic, so there's 5 cases in a box. They're not sold online for various reasons. But as far as is this more appealing to license holders, I don't think we're there yet. It's still confusing. It's pretty easy to map James Bond to a shooting game, But if you say, we're going to make a game out of friends, generally the question isn't so much episodic as what do you do in a friends game? So answering those questions comes before the model. We definitely think the retail space is just so difficult to get a product, a friends game, which we have no plans of making a friends game, but as a company I think we could do a really good friends game. I'm not a huge Friends fan, but it's the kind of property that we're set up to go after. It'd be very difficult to get that onto the retail space, but I think we could make that work in the online space. So the first question to answer is, what is the game? Why is somebody who's a fan of Friends going to enjoy this experience? The second is, what is the format? There's stuff that we wouldn't do because it just doesn't fit episodically for us. There's there's racing games and shooting. James Bond. EA pretty much knows how to make a James Bond game, so we'll leave that one alone, and we'll tackle the stuff that we do well.
Thank you.
I think we're out of time now. So next up is going to be John Baez from the Behemoth talking about the Indie MBA, and we'll be outside.